The video you're about to see is the marketing panel that was just a couple of weeks ago at the Outlier Podcast Festival. I had the opportunity to put together a couple of panels and moderate them, and this was one of them. And we're talking about marketing, how to market your podcast, what we've learned from our mistakes. As you guys know, I've had a few failed attempts, but some good ones, and I've learned from each failed attempt. So I don't really see them as failures. They're learning experiences, more than money can buy. In the marketing panel that you're about to watch, I want to say thank you to my friends Valerie, Taylor, Ben, and Ben for being on the panel. Grateful for you guys to be there. Also grateful for our friends at Outlier. Special shout out to Ariel and Ever. You guys put on an awesome event. For anybody that's watching, if you're ever in an area where an Outlier Podcast Festival is going on, I recommend going to it because they put on a great event that enables you to be able to network and connect with other podcasters and storytellers. So with that being said, enjoy the panel. Before we get started, 30 seconds, I want to go through our panelists here and tell us about you, what podcast you have, and yeah, just anything under 30 seconds. So.
With me?
Up.
Oh, starting with me. Okay, all right.
Mike.
I am. Last to be here, first to talk. Okay. My name's Ben Jones. I am on a podcast called Dudes from Utah. I'm also a voice actor. And one of my co-hosts is actually in this room right now, Roger Singh.
We have a podcast called Dudes from Utah.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but check it out. It's awesome. Dudes from Utah. Great. It's a great one. Is that what you want?
That was great. That's
Anybody?
great. I'm like my dad. Like, yeah, I'm paying attention, son.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Dad? Can I use the keys?
Are we passing?
Yeah,
sorry.
pass that.
You're totally fine. Hi, I'm Taylor Proctor. My podcast is called Happiness Abound, and it is a podcast where I share mindsets, exercises, and techniques to help you be a little bit happier in your daily life. And I really try to connect every episode to the mission, which is also my podcast tagline, which is that you are capable of happiness abound. I've been doing my show for about 2 years, started in September 2017, and actually did it as a daily weekday show all the way until January when I hit episode 500 and went, I think it's time to go to a weekly and start to invest in my business and use that time for my business as well as the podcast instead of focusing what felt like 100% on the podcast. So yeah, you can find me at happinessabound.com, and my Instagram is happiness_abound.
Well, thank you. My name is also Ben, Ben Croshaw, so Ben Jones. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. But
I'm in a Ben sandwich right now.
Hey, this family place, guys. Come on.
So I have a podcast. It's called Ticked. I've been doing it for about 3 years. I started January of 2017, so right around the same time as you. So Ticked is an interview-based podcast. Every week I interview a driven individual, and I ask them what makes them tick and also what ticks them off. And the funny thing about that is the ticks, those motivators, are kind of a little more unique to each individual in their circumstance. And as you listen, it's kind of fun to find out what makes them tick versus comparing what makes you tick. And then the tick-offs are just those unifying pet peeves and things that piss all of us off, and it's hilarious to talk about them. I interviewed a pilot once, and his tick-off was that pee stalls are too small.
I don't know how to follow that. My name's Val Cameron, and I work in radio, which I know can be kind of a bad word to podcasters. But I've worked in radio for over 15 years. I've been on the air for almost 5 years, and I have a podcast called Movies That Make Us. I'm also a film critic, and I'm not at Sundance right now, so you're welcome.
Thank you.
But I have a podcast with 2 other people. We're part of a network called Stolen Droid Network. So if you heard the Stolen Droids podcast, that's been around for a long time. Movies That Make Us has only been around for about 6 months. I have 3 other projects under works. One of them keeps failing, so we're going to talk about that today. On why that's happening. I love to talk, so I'm in the right business. I don't know, that's it. That's all I got.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Valerie. Thanks for everybody. I actually have a question for everyone in the audience here, and actually everybody in the room. Raise your hand if you've ever podcast in a car before. Good. We're a bunch of weirdos. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever podcasted under a blanket before. Good. There's a lot more of those. Raise your hand if you've ever podcasted in a closet. Good. Okay, good. Most of us have done these weird things, and if you haven't done it yet, you're going to realize that it's not weird because you're going for the sound quality. Nobody knows what you're doing. So Ben and I have spent a lot of time in my back seat. Recording a podcast at a family place.
We have stories. Check it out on Dudes from Utah.
So you guys have your yes/no panels here. I have a quick yes or no question for you. Is your podcast an element of your brand or business, or is it the end product that you're trying to sell?
How's the yes or no on that?
Oh, sorry.
Is this good? It's an in-between.
Is your podcast your end product?
I don't know how this works.
Is your podcast your end product?
No.
Okay, so then it is an element of your brand, right? Yes, okay, I'm assuming, okay.
Yes,
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I'm drawing right blanks here. Okay, so I want to break down marketing. Marketing, people look at like, oh, you could do that in Photoshop. People think that's what marketing is, and it's not. Marketing is two pieces. You have the brand, the creative piece where you create something, which we're all doing here, and then there's the actual delivery mechanism. Is you made something great, you built a great store, but how do you get your eyes on that store? How do you get people to recognize you? And then you take that one step further, and it's how do you get people to hook and like you? I have a question for our panelists here. Who have you alienated trying to advertise your podcast over and over, and how have you won those people back after you've alienated them? Because we create something, we put it on Facebook, right? We invite everybody to watch it and like it. So how have you won those people back?
Sure. One of the things that in my podcast journey, starting with a daily and doing it every weekday to up to 500 episodes, was that I started to realize that my audience, who I wanted to work with and wanted to connect with, are usually type A perfectionists, which are also completionists. And so when you're creating a podcast every single day, that can be alienating if they miss one, because then they feel like they have to catch up, and they happen so quickly every day that they start to feel overwhelmed, and then I would lose them. So that was another good reason for me to move to a weekly, so I could connect with my audience better and hopefully get them back instead of alienating them by overwhelming them with too much content.
Right, okay, thank you. So another question, you can answer this if you want to.
Sure.
Everyone here has created their own podcast, I'm assuming on the panel. When you've done that, you've probably done everything yourself. What were some of the issues you ran into as you were creating your podcast by yourself?
So with me, I had created a brand online about myself for the last 10 years that has changed, because it's weird, but people change. I used to work for the Walt Disney Company, so everything that I could talk about, everything that I could post, everything that was me was clean and shiny, and I love Disney and I drink the Kool-Aid, but you have to be very, very careful about what you post and what you do and what you create. And I'm trying to create a podcast that has no censors, but I work in a business that has all the censors, so trying to find that element. I've pissed a lot of people off that knows this squeaky clean Val, and then I happen to post a picture of me in cosplay, and I have boobs. It's weird, I'm a woman. And people get all upset about it. I actually had this happen a week and a half ago where I got messaged and verbally kind of yelled at online because I am a bad influence on my daughter and on women, because I was really good at creating my brand up until this point to be squeaky clean, and the gradient in which some people saw me changing was too quickly. So that's the thing you need to work on. If you're deciding to change your brand or go in another direction, and you want to push those boundaries, you have to understand that the people that have been following you for this long, you're going to jolt them in a crazy way. So you've got to, and I thought I had been doing it slowly over 2 years, but some people it's just too quickly. So you do kind of have to do that. And so as I was creating the Seemingly Appropriate podcast, which I've been trying to get off the ground for a while, trying to put that out there that this was these are things I'm going to start talking about, so people start getting used to that. Some people do not like that idea, so it's got to be on I have two different lives that I have to live in, so that's a little bit different. But trying to start it on my own is a lot harder than the podcast that I have with other people. And one of them I heard, the last panel was all women. I've had 3 producers have to quit my podcast because I'm not married, because their wives don't want them to be spending that much time with me. I don't think that would happen with these guys. You know what I mean? Like I could go produce any guy's podcast, and it would be okay, but I've had 3 people now literally have to stop. So learn how to do all of your stuff.
Sorry, it's over.
It's over. It's over. So sorry that was really long, but know your equipment, know your producers, have conversations with them in advance, because it was literally the day my podcast was supposed to launch and nothing went up on this last producer. And then he told me that him and his wife had to go to therapy about me specifically because he wanted to,
that sounds like a them problem.
it is, but it was my problem because they could have told me like days ahead of time, so I could have gotten my content from him, edited myself, which I can do all these things myself, but I have another full-time job. So this person was like, hey, I really want to work with you. They came to me, I finally gave in, and then again, boobs, it's a problem.
Well, just so you're aware, if I wore the same cosplay outfit and took a picture, if you want to put that up next to yours, people will definitely say great things about yours. Trust me, these man boobs are not very good. Hair.
Everybody has them.
Braided. Everybody has. Sorry.
One thing, Val, to your point, it is crucial that you learn how to do everything on your own. But I would also say don't feel like there's a serious hurdle to just jump out and just start. I laugh every time I go back and listen to my very first episode because my audio quality has changed so much over the course of the podcast. And I sat on this idea for over a year, and then I sat in meetings and kind of in production ideas for 6 months because I was just nervous. Like, I don't have that experience. I'm not quite ready. I don't have all my ducks in a row. And then my friend and I just started and ran with it, and you learn along the way. So just jump in is what I would say. You know,
and as far as alienating, I'm going to turn it on myself because I'm very good at making fun of my own self and putting myself down. I would try to start a podcast, and then I'd alienate my own self because I didn't like what I was getting ready to put out. You know, I mean, so it's like I'm not even trying. I'm failing before I'm actually putting anything out. And so I go by a rule of, love many, trust few, always paddle your own canoe. You got to be yourself and just get out there and if you're going to alienate anyone, just continue being yourself because you're going to have 100 more people that are going to love what you're doing rather than those few that may not want to be a part of what you're doing or what your content is. And I guess I just don't care. But then I go off the air and I do care and I try. But that's just me. So Roger gets to see it. It's sad.
So talking about branding, when you're scrolling the feed there, people are scrolling the feed, you have less than 3 seconds to keep people and catch their attention there. So it's really important for you to have from an image standpoint, a brand that pops up that people can say quickly, like, oh, that's from so-and-so, that's so-and-so's podcast, I can recognize that. How do you leverage social media in the way that people know that is your brand?
So I see these mistakes a lot about people using the wrong kind of social media. I learned marketing and branding from the biggest marketing and branding company in the world, and it's Disney. And one of the biggest things that they do with either big products or small products, and it works for everyone. And I go out and teach this in seminars, and I go to specific companies and figure out what their brand is, and you have to know what it is. And then once you figure out who it is you're talking to, because you can't talk to everyone, your brand can't be, I want to be everything to everyone. You're going to fail, not in a good way. But you need to figure out who you're talking to and what social media that person uses. So on B98.7 in the morning, which is my radio show, we have a very specific person. We talk to Jennifer. Her name's Jennifer. Why is her name Jennifer? Because we have a certain age range of women that we want to contact. And the name Jennifer was the most used name in that generation of people. So Jennifer is the person we talk to every day. She is in a very specific age range. She buys very specific things. She has so many kids, and she lives in Draper, right? She spells all of her kids' names weird. There's like a niner in there somewhere, right? His name's Lee J with a Z, okay? But we know who this person is. So when we are picking our stories, our topics, when we are picking the images that we're going to use, we think about Jennifer. Now, in podcasting, you can be a little more broad, but you still need to have a very specific type of person that you're going to talk to, because Jennifer doesn't use Twitter. She doesn't tweet at all, okay? So would I spend a whole bunch of my time and energy on Twitter? Where does Jennifer spend her time? Facebook, and probably looking at food on Instagram. Okay, she's probably only on Snapchat like me, because that's how her and her daughter communicate. That's how I talk to my teenager, is on Snapchat. So find out who it is you're talking to and what they use, because you could put a whole bunch of time, effort, money, energy into social media, and your audience isn't even there.
I would say on the putting my brand out there, as a solo show, one of my first mistakes was I put my brand and my logo as my podcast picture, but I didn't put my face. And I did about 200 episodes, 250 episodes before I started also filming video at the same time. And that has been a game changer, because when you're talking one-on-one, people want to know you, they want to see you, they want to see your face. And so I did a shift where I changed my podcast image to my face with my logo. And I also started posting the videos on IGTV and also a little bit on LinkedIn. And I've been testing out a few things like that and also moving into YouTube. But in terms of that connection for the branding and how do they know it's your podcast, for me, that I have turned that into my face. And I think it was earlier this morning, one of the pros of being a podcaster was that there's that clout or that status. And he had mentioned that a lot of the solo podcast shows get that. And it's mostly because we're using it for our business, but we're individuals. So for me, that branding was really being able to have the courage to go beyond just the audio and at least put my face out, or at least create a video and be able to connect in a way where the beauty of podcasting is that you can connect, you're in their ears, right? But it's not a conversation back and forth. So how can you make it as human as possible and related to you as much as possible? And for me, that big transition was being able to put my face out on my podcast.
That's actually really important.
Yeah.
So I work in user experience design. Actually, with this legend right here in front of me, we work in user experience. And in user testing, I just want to share this little tidbit with you. We're able to take tests of where people look the most on a website or on an image, and tying to that, we go straight to faces on imagery. So you're kind of hitting it on the nose, and I want to, just say that you should use your face more because that's your brand.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so our with Ticked, our color palette is grays and then a bright yellow, and part of our word mark has like the little check mark, like a tick mark inside the K of Ticked. So our branding that we have, when we started, I was so stuck on the idea of I just want this yellow to pop. So all of my episode pictures, everything was kind of more of a black and white, and then this yellow check mark, this tick mark would kind of pop. And we did a full year of that, of all black and white, and we were losing engagement and all of my friends, I mean, I do this as kind of a side project really, and all of my friends said we want to be able to connect with more color, like we want something better to look at in essence. So then we moved to kind of more color. You'll see that on the website, you'll see that on all of our social channels. And so a lot of it I think is what you guys have also said, is showing the face, connecting with people, and they want to see a world of color.
Dudes from Utah, if you look at our website and what we've got, fortunately, I am not the guru. It's definitely Roger and what he does with how he makes it work. But, dudes from Utah, we think Utah is going to be, we wanted the National Arches because that's a pretty famous thing. But then Raj takes a picture, puts our faces on there, and we look lovely. But I think it's important that you do have that physical presence of who you are, and that is so great. But to me, it's mainly if you've got someone that knows what they're doing, stick with them because they're good at it. So you're welcome, Roger. There you go.
You guys. So I want to keep things moving along. So give you about 30 seconds to a minute to answer this question, but let's switch to, so we talked about branding, the creative side of it. How do you look? Now the bigger part, the harder part is how do you get people to see you? I mean, the name of the game is the more faces that see your brand, it's better that way. It'll convert better. So what have you done to market yourself and your brand? What has not worked for you? What have you failed at? And what did you learn from that?
With Movies That Make Us, we specifically, when we sat down to talk about the brand and the logo and what we wanted to do with it, is we're three nerds that want to talk about movies, and we want to talk about nerdy movies. And so our logo is a VHS tape. So we're talking to a very specific crowd that would know what a VHS tape is.
Mom, what's this?
It's very retro, so we also pull in people that really like that retro. They may not know what the show is about, but they like that logo. But I'm fully into grassroots marketing. I think being one-on-one or standing in front of somebody and talking about your product is way more important sometimes than social media. And so what we've done, because it goes along with our brand and our audience, is we've actually gone out and done podcasts at conventions that actually work along with the kind of crowd that we're trying to pull in. And so then we're standing in front of them, we're giving them what we're doing, we're performing, and we're immediately making friends. Because to go along with showing a picture, and this is along with the morning show too, is it's my job to make you feel like you're my best friend. And are you going to go to your best friend's Instagram every day and see what they're up to? You are. Are you going to go to your best friend's podcast to see what they're talking about this Monday? Because we put ours out weekly. You are. And so meeting people in person, doing videos on social media. Videos are really important. Even Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives are really important because they feel like you're talking right to them. They can talk back to you, and they get to see a little bit of you that they think no one else is seeing. And so you're creating that friend. Just stagnant posts all the time and just audio all the time is not gonna get you there.
Yeah, sure. So with my podcast being mindset oriented, one of the biggest mindsets that I had to break through was this concept that I was just going to create my podcast and I was nervous to tell somebody. And I created an absurdly amount of podcasts, like in the hundreds, like 120, I think it was. Before I started telling people I had a podcast. And I know maybe this isn't the audience for that, but for any of you that are just starting out, I think first and foremost, being able to say, yeah, I have a podcast and this is what I do and this is what I talk about is huge because it's that word of mouth and people are having that connection with you, just like what you were saying. And then the next thing was, and a mindset belief was having a solo show. I felt like I couldn't reach out to other interview shows because I couldn't reciprocate. And so I held back on pitching that, hey, you could interview me on your show, and that helping me grow my show and provide content and valuable information for that interviewer. I held back on doing that for a really long time until I was talking to someone and I mentioned that to them and they did an interview show and they said, that's BS. You would help me create great content, which would be awesome for my show. So please come on my show. You don't have to reciprocate. Let's just share on social media and all of that. And that has catalyst to being on over 20 podcasts, Young Blood Life over there. I've been on that one a few times. And just being able to connect with individuals and their shows. So in terms of what can you do from grassroots marketing, first and foremost, if you have those mindsets, work through them because they are holding you back. But second off, just connect with people and feel free to reach out and know that you have something to say and people want to connect with that. And connecting with those people, whether on their shows or networking meetings and events like this, can make a big difference.
I think a big part of this depends on the kind of format that you want your podcast to be. Mine's an interview-based podcast, and so when I bring a guest in, I'm also bringing in their Instagram audience. And then I have them post. I have them share a story live when we're about to record. It's really fun for people to see behind the scenes a little bit. And then I provide for them all the same kind of imagery that I'm going to use for posting. I also send that to the person that I've interviewed, just to kind of help do the work for them almost, so that it's very simple. All they have to do is just jump on and share, but I'm tapping into their audience a little bit through the interview based. So that's the biggest marketing reach that I have, is because of the people that I bring on. But I totally understand for story based or those kind of things that marketing doesn't work as well.
For me, I think, and I'm just going to assume, which is probably not the right thing to do. I've been told that's not the right thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is I see a room full of people who are wanting to create something and have created something and are going out and doing something about it and putting action into their plan. But if you're anything like me, I'm a very confident person in certain settings. But when it comes to like Facebook or any social media kind of stuff, one thing I can't stand is when people just keep reposting, blah, 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 just is so mind-numbing. And so literally like 2 days ago, or no, last week, I decided I'm just taking Facebook off. I'm like, which is such a stupid thing because I'm in a podcasting world. I'm like, I'm just going to do it because I'm tired of all the notifications, blah, blah, blah. But then I realized, no, it's not about, trying to get the word out through the social media. To me, it's the no fear attitude that I've created through my life to say I can go up to anybody and say, hey, this is what I do, and whether they want to watch it or not or listen to it, that's up to them. But I'm going to be confident in the fact that, hey, I'm excited to share this with you, and that will get the word going. So word of mouth, I think, is a huge way of being able to get the marketing out there, along with the Facebook and all the other social media side. But when it comes to social media side, I am dead in the water. That's, once again, back over to you, Roger.
Back to you, Roger.
Back to you, Roger.
Yeah, so the one piece of advice I always give people, and I've told a few people this, is that the one piece of advice I could give you is be a likable person, a genuine likable person, because that'll go a long ways. I'm going to turn it to Twitter here real quick. I don't know if we have enough.
Let's just do one more question, and we can kind of wrap, if that's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, we actually have no questions on Twitter. So, awesome. That works out, everyone. Let's give our panel a hand. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.